What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton's true enemy in Ferrari is neither Red Bull nor McLaren, but his own car? What Vasseur has just confessed before Great Britain is shocking, and could change everything. Fred Vasseur's recent confession not only naked a technical crisis in Ferrari, but also reveals a philosophical fracture that could define Hamilton's failure in his new stage, just before his most symbolic career of the year, Silverstone. Fred Vasseur did not offer a simple technical explanation to justify the slow adaptation process of Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari. What has revealed is a fundamental crack in the way in which SF25 was conceived, designed and taken to track. In words that resonated as an earthquake in the paddock, the head of the ramp Andy Cavallino said that the problem facing the 7-time world champion cannot be traced in the telemetry graphics or in the cold numbers of the simulator. It is much deeper. It is human. It is instinctive. It is philosophical. For almost 2 decades, Hamilton has perfected an aggressive, intuitive, almost visceral driving way. It was launched to stardom with a style that challenges logic, braking to the limit, sudden direction changes, and a sensitivity to anticipate the behavior of the car that allowed it to win in extreme conditions, where others failed. But current cars, governed by the soil effect, have redefined the art of driving. It doesn't matter how much talent you have if you don't adapt to the new aerodynamic language. A language that requests surgical precision, clean paths, millimeter stability. There is no space for creative lack of control. And that is precisely what Hamilton's DNA is killing back. Vasseur was clear in saying that the SF25 does not necessarily penalize Hamilton more than Leclerc in terms of data, but it is the way in which the British pilot reacts to the general concept of the car that is creating the barrier. A soil effect car does not allow late corrections. If the pilot loses the aerodynamic seal of the flat background at delicate pressure zone that allows generating load without increasing resistance, the loss of adhesion is immediate and brutal. And Hamilton, accustomed to trusting his reactions rather than in the natural stability of the car, is found in a kind of emotional and technical exile. Everything he learned from his karting years to his triumphs with Mercedes becomes, now, a ballast. This is not a pilot trying to find its shape. It is a legend of Formula One facing a devastating truth. To survive in this new era of the Queen category, it has to be rebuilt from scratch. Reprogram your handling style. Relier what I thought I already dominated. And do it while under the scrutiny of millions, in the most emblematic team of world motor racing, and facing a partner who has been adapted to these demands for years. Vasseur's confession not only reveals that Hamilton is lost inside his own car, he reveals that Ferrari knows that he is suffering that doubt. And that, even so, it continues to push to adapt to a car that was never thought for him, but perhaps now he needs to change skin if he wants to survive 2025. In recent years, Ferrari has worked tirelessly to develop cars that adapt to a very specific pilot profile, Charles Leclerc. Monegasco, with its clean, methodical and precise driving style, became the reference for Maranello engineers. From the SF90 to the SF24, the design philosophy revolved around its technical preferences and track sensations. But with the arrival of Lewis Hamilton, that equation became unstable. The balance that seemed settled has been tested, and not all of the team agree with the decisions that are being made. The new soil introduced in the SF25 during the Austria Grand Prix is not simply a technical evolution. It represents an ideological change. It was a key piece, designed with the intention not officially declared, but evident in its effects of softening the behavior of the car in critical phases of the curve. According to internal data and analysis of specialists, this modification significantly improved braking stability and progressivity in curve pass. Just what Hamilton had been claiming since the preseason. And this is where the tension begins to grow. Because this soil was not the product of the continuity of the work around Leclerc, but was influenced by a small technical faction within the team, some of which arrived after working with Hamilton in Mercedes. These engineers know the sensibilities of the British. They know how to configure a car that makes it feel comfortable. And that is generating an ideological division within Ferrari. A silent war between the evolution based on the recent past of the team, and a new vision that aims to maximize the potential of the new star signing. Vasseur and his closest group are forced to balances. Publicly, they cannot say that the car is being shaped in the style of Hamilton, because that would be disavowing Leclerc and further shake the media loop. But the data is difficult to hide. In circuits where the SF25 suffered chronic instability in braking and lateral transfer, it now shows signs of progress. And those signs are aligned with the requirements of the British. The car, little by little, is beginning to speak in Lewis's language. This turn in the technical direction puts on the table an inevitable conflict. Can a first-class Formula One car simultaneously adapt to two different styles without compromising its performance? Leclerc needs a car that responds fast, that is agile in changes of direction, and that allows you to attack the curves with immediate confidence. Hamilton, on the other hand, requires stability, a more robust aerodynamic platform, and a car that does not punish it if you have to improvise. The SF25 is caught between these two realities. And although Austria's floors seem to offer a technical truce, it is only the first chapter. Silverstone will be the real test. If the car continues to favor Hamilton, and if he manages to capture that advantage in tangible results, Ferrari's hierarchical structure could stagger. Not only because the narrative around Leclerc would be questioned, but because it would imply that the project should be redirected towards a new horizon, one in which Lewis Hamilton is the absolute reference point. The big question then is not if Ferrari can build a car for Hamilton. He is already trying. The real issue is whether it can do it without dynamiting everything that has built around Leclerc during the last 5 years. Great Britain's Grand Prix has always been an iconic scenario for Lewis Hamilton, not only for being his home career, but because Silverstone represents, more than any other layout, the emotional connection between the pilot and his people. Here has lived some of its most remembered victories, comeback impossible in the rain, overflowing celebrations, and moments of glory that mark times. But this time the situation is completely different. This time Hamilton arrives with the soul fractured by a car that does not understand it, with a divided team, and with the weight of demonstrating that his signing by Ferrari was not a historical mistake. Silverstone will not only be his opportunity for vindication. It will also be the place where all the accumulated tensions in Maranello could explode. The SF25, with its recent updates, has given signs of evolution. But that evolution does not guarantee results. What is at stake in this race is somewhat more valuable than points or positions. It is the legitimacy of the Hamilton-Ferrari project. If here, in his land, with the absolute support of the stands, he fails to transform that supposed improvement into a dominant action, the narrative will begin to turn against him with a ruthless violence. And it is that Silverstone is one of the circuits that most punishes the lack of confidence in the car. It cops high-speed curves, maggots, Beckett's demand total symbiosis between pilot and machine. There is no room for doubts. Each change of direction must be executed with blind faith in the equilibrium of the car. It is precisely where Hamilton has been failing since he went up to SF25. In trusting. In feeling that you can push without the car betraying it. If you do not succeed here, in your sanctuary, you will hardly do it in more hostile stages. But if you get it, if you manage to exploit the potential that hints this new soil, if it turns its fragility into force, then the plot will be monumental. It could be the first stone of Hamilton's true rebirth. Not the legendary pilot who clings to the past, but the competitor capable of rewriting himself to master a new era, even with a car that was not made to measure. Silverstone has the potential to be redemption, the demonstration that even at age 40 Hamilton has not said his last word. Ferrari meanwhile also plays a lot. The strategy, the decisions in boxes, the internal management between Hamilton and Leclerc. Everything will be under scrutiny. Because one thing is to have a competitive car, and a very different one is to know how to use it under pressure. Silverstone is more than a circuit. It is a judgment scenario. The verdict will be immediate. If Hamilton shines, the SF25 will be validated as a positive evolution project. But if you fail, critics will see it as a sign that Ferrari has opted for a pilot who simply does not fit the nature of modern Formula One. And then, the question will no longer be if the car can adapt to Hamilton. The question will be if Ferrari is willing to continue molding for him, or if this chapter will end long as expected. Now that we have crumbled piece by piece this confession of Vasseur, the panorama no longer admits half-inks. The reality facing Ferrari is as raw as complex. Can a team with decades of history forged under a consolidated technical system reinvent himself to adapt to a pilot like Lewis Hamilton? Or is he condemned to repeat the same mistakes of the past, caught between his legacy and his resistance to change? The new floor introduced in Austria was only the beginning. But what is really at stake are not aerodynamic elements or wind tunnel simulations. It is the very identity of SF25. If Ferrari continues to evolve the car towards Hamilton's demands, he could unlock a version of himself that we have not seen this season yet. But that also implies redefining internal hierarchies, challenging Leclerc's comfort, and publicly assuming that the change was not only necessary but inevitable. And you, who have followed this story step by step with us, I want to know what you think. Do you think Ferrari must compromise all his philosophy, his technical development, even his internal political balance to give Hamilton the tools he needs? Or do you think that this experiment is intended for failure and that it was a mistake to try to adapt to a legendary pilot to a structure as rigid as Maranello's? Leave it in the comments.